Welcome to another episode of Joe and the Fat Man. As always, Joe Smelter, Nittany Sports Now, Kyle Golick, Nittany Sports Now, our producer Jay Hallahan, who also writes for Mike Farrell Sports. He is not here for the honor portion of this episode, but he will be behind the scenes and responsible for getting this all up, which he does each and every week. So shout out to him. And this is June, which we said in the previous few episodes that podcast in June is going to include recruiting talk, and this one certainly is no exception. Penn State has what looks like a pretty good recruiting class on paper, right? It's number 7 in the country on 24/7 Sports. Last year it finished 18th, so you would think that would be an improvement. But people are getting mad, and here is why people are getting mad. Several players who were thought to be Penn State favorites, or at least had the possibility to commit to Penn State, it looks like they're going elsewhere. The two big ones, Joey O'Brien, who is obviously an in-state guy from LaSalle College High School near Philadelphia, which is where Abdul Carter went. It looks like he's going to Notre Dame. We don't know that for sure. In fact, he just posted a photo of him in a Penn State uniform, which, if you follow recruiting enough, you know to take those things with a grain of salt. But all indications are that Notre Dame is in the lead right now. That's a 5-star player from Pennsylvania. It wouldn't be good to lose him. Kerry Adams, another defensive back, a high-end 4-star from the state of Virginia. He is also leading towards Notre Dame, reportedly. And then Luke Wafel, whose brother Owen started his college career in Michigan and transferred to Penn State. He is now a Nittany Lion. His older brother, younger Wafel, is a 4-star edge. He is leaning towards Ohio State, with USC reportedly in the mix. Brandon Arrington, a 5-star guy, one of the best pound-for-pound players in the country, took an official visit to Penn State. Penn State was thought to be in the mix, but now it's down to Oregon and Texas A&M. So clearly, Penn State is not in the plans for him. Kyle, is this any reason to be concerned? Because obviously, the current Penn State team is rolling. NIL seems to be a lot better. Jim Knowles is hired. The program is spending money, but June is the time when people like to get mad about recruiting. Is this a case of Penn State fans just looking for something to worry themselves about? Or is there a little more to this here? Does James Franklin and company, do they need to do better?
Well, I'm not going to say Penn State's in a crisis right now in recruiting. I mean, you still have a top 10 class by all accounts, especially from how 24/7 looks at it. On 3, I believe, has them at that rank. It would be worrisome if there wasn't the 20 commits that Penn State has at the moment. And look, I know a lot of people are worried about the defensive back because they didn't get that elite player. But Penn State's still leading for Dorian Barney. It's coming down between the Nittany Lions at this point in Alabama. So, Terry Smith has his work cut out for him on that one. I'm probably going to butcher it, Joe, but Emmanuel Nacho. I'm gonna, we can always get that kid out of Maryland. It seems like he's really in love with the Oregon program. I mean, Penn State had the Ducks woozy for a bit, but it seems that they have taken a little bit more of a command. But when you look at this class top to bottom, Joe, right now, you got the Fort Cherry Matt Sieg kid, who's projected to be a safety. He's rated as the number 2 prospect in the state of Pennsylvania. You got Kevin Brown, who looks elite at the tackle position. You got Peyton Falzone at quarterback that looks like, and Troy Hoon, who had a great elite 11. You got a great group of linebackers in Wiggins and Elijah Littlejohn, who I believe just committed the other day even. You start looking at this top to bottom, Joe, I'm not worried whatsoever. I think, it goes back to what we said in our show a few weeks ago. Obviously we always tout this as this is a must get because he's number 1. It has the two-way talent, etc. But we've been down this road before with James, and it seems like James comes out on top with this. So I don't think this is right now the panic button. I really like what this class makeup is. What say you?
I agree. And I think you might have seen the Bronx Burning, which you're a Yankee fan. That was an ESPN mini series about
Yes.
20 years ago now, detailing the 77 Yankees. You might remember the line where Gabe Paul, well, not the real Gabe Paul, but the guy playing Gabe Paul, the general manager, says to Reggie Jackson, Branch Rickey once told me, don't look at the hole in the donut, look at the donut as a whole. And I think that's a good reminder here because Penn State, for all the praise James Franklin and staff get in recruiting, they're not a team that's going to finish perennially in the top five, top three recruiting wise. In fact, seldom do they finish in the top 10, and they're number 7 right now. So that's pretty good, right? You think about how good that 2022 class has been for Penn State and how hyped it was even before they arrived on campus, obviously, with Drew Aller, Abdul Carter, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, Zane Durant, things that turned out pretty well. That was the number 6 ranked class. This class is ranked number 7. Now, I'm not suggesting that this class is going to have a similar impact, but one of the beauties of this is, Kyle, is that it doesn't have to have a similar impact. When that 22 class arrived on campus, Penn State was coming off 2 seasons where it went 11 and 11 combined. They needed that shot in the arm in recruiting. Every recruiting is just gravy for Penn State now. The main focus is that this 2025 team, the guys that are here right now, wins a national championship because we all know, and we'll talk about it for the next several months, they have every capability of doing that. And recruiting's just a bonus when the current team's going really good. It's like baseball fans, if you're rooting for a team like the Phillies or the Dodgers, we'll use the Phillies because that's a team that is very good but hasn't gone over the hump yet. If the Phillies were winning the NL East, nobody would look and say, "Oh, this is great. Our current team's awesome. We might win the World Series." But MLB Pipeline only has us ranked 17th with the farm system. That wouldn't make much sense to think like that. I think recruiting is similar. You look at the 2023 class, which isn't too long ago. The top 5 recruits. I'm reading them off right now from On Free. Javen Williams, Alex Birchmeyer, Tony Rojas, King Mack, Andrew Rappelier. Only Tony Rojas has become a regular starter, and Javen Williams was a 5-star who is, and Alex Birchmeyer too. Those are 2 5-stars that haven't really broken through yet because they're playing behind players that weren't rated as highly. Vega Iane was a 3-star coming out, but he's going to get a hell of a lot more playing time than Alex Birchmeyer is this season because you just don't know what's going to happen once these guys get to campus. Tyler Warren was a 3-star. Abdul Carter, a low end 4-star. Saquon Barkley. James Franklin's best players overall. And yeah, you have your guys like Micah Parsons who come in with great expectations and meet those expectations. But, you know, the star ratings are big, right? They help and they can be very accurate at times, but it all comes down to player development. And I would say at this point that James Franklin and his staff have earned the benefit of the doubt when it comes to developing players. They just have. So, yeah,
One,
I think if this class finishes in the top 10 with how good the current program is and with how good these coaches have been in developing players, I think you'll take that if you're Penn State.
100%. And you hit the nail on the head. Like a lot of guys, when you talk in the recruiting industry, say, there's a type of athlete Penn State likes. And they see when an athlete might be a 3-star athlete and they have an exceptional skill set in a few key areas that are raw, and they like to develop them. That's whenever you see like the uh, Abdul Carter going from a low 4-star to being essentially what I would suggest would be, if we had to do a retro ranking, he may have been the top overall prospect in his class. I mean, as a 5-star, we talk, look at this class, for example. A lot of the recruiting guys are talking about Alex Haskell out of Philadelphia. He's a 3-star prospect, but a lot of them say that he has Mason Graham upside. Mason Graham went, I believe, 4th or 5th overall in the NFL draft that happened just in April or May here by the Cleveland Browns. You take that all day long if you get that sort of production from Alex Haskell. And again, we don't know what he's going to be. I'm just throwing that as an example. Looks like Penn State's really getting behind getting a quarterback depth, which is huge. They still maintained Messiah Minkins, which Notre Dame really, really wanted to get off him, especially with how close his relationship was with Jawan Sider. So, there's been a lot of wins, but you gotta realize with you only have so many spots. Penn State has 20 commits right now. You know, again, I understand the rosters are getting up to allowing 105 scholarship players, Joe.
Yes. Yeah,
So
with the
you
house
start
helmets.
thinking about it at a 25 per class. You have 4 classes, that's 100 players, so you're always going to have some sort of red shirts. Obviously you're going to have departures and whatnot. So what's that magic number where they're going to be getting to? And that's maybe a number we need to start figuring out here sooner rather than later. Is the number, we always thought 25 is kind of where you're a little bit above 25, you have a little bit of a bigger class, you might leverage some gray shirts or red shirts of that matter. But as of right now, Joe, I really do think Penn State's going to land Dorian Barney later, and I think they know it, and that's where they're putting all their eggs into the basket on. Might be a risky proposition, but I like this class where it stands right now, especially considering when you've seen a lot of the classes in the Franklin era have been like in the 15 range or even in the bottom part of the top 20. You know, you, who are we to complain about it being at number 7 right now?
Right, and until you are the top dog in college football, you're gonna lose these type of battles. You think about the names that I mentioned that are beating Penn State's out, but look to be ahead of Penn State for these players. They are teams that have beaten Penn State on the field. The 3 teams I mentioned, Ohio State, Oregon, and Notre Dame, are not so coincidentally the 3 teams responsible for Penn State's losses last season. And until you can get over the hump and win those top 5 games, and I'm not trying to beat too much the Franklin can't win the big one or Franklin needs to win the big one card, it all plays into it. It's definitely a big factor. So you could chalk it up to, Penn State not being good at recruiting, not duking out NIL, which how Penn State is getting criticized for NIL after the winter they had with bringing back this roster. I have no idea. And I have on good authority that Penn State offered Kobe King, 6th-round draft pick Kobe King, a 7-figure deal to stay in school. You're not doing that if you're having too many NIL problems, if you catch my drift. But
Penn State might be amongst the teams that you've heard guys like Brett Bielema and Kirk Signetti say that they're spending maybe $40 million. We're not saying they are, but you start connecting some dots here. 3.2 million for what, Jim Knowles? I know that doesn't count towards that number, but you got to imagine that there's been a lot of money laid out to keep us Zane Durant instead of going to the draft, a denied Dennis Sutton, an AJ Harris, and you start going. Trevor Pena definitely came here, and there was probably a dollar bill to be had for that, and even keeping Fat Man, Kate, my boy in arms there, Katron Allen, and Nick Singleton. Those are names you got to keep. Even Drew. I mean, Drew probably. If Drew would have declared this year, Joe, bona fide first rounder. Agree?
I would say so.
I would say he would probably have pushed the top 10 of the NFL draft. Agree?
Yeah, I would say so.
There's some money for him there. So, like I say, I look at Penn State. You can't blame NIL. At this point, Penn State's in about as good as a position as you want. Could it be better? Sure, but I'm not complaining where they're at.
Yeah, and Penn State fans are going to blame NIL because you have to blame something, right? It can't be as simple as Notre Dame is a great program, Penn State has a great program, Joey O'Brien's a great prospect. Joey O'Brien decided he liked Notre Dame better and went there. We move on. That's not how it works in the minds of a lot of these fans. There has to be a deeper reason, and NIL is a pretty good cop out for what that deeper reason is. But it comes down to Penn State is still getting beat by these big programs, and if you get beat on the field, you're going to get beat in recruiting, and that's what's happening here. And it leads to, I think, probably a legitimate concern as to where it's like it goes hand in hand to where if you can't beat these guys on the field, how are you going to beat them from recruits? And if you can't beat them in recruiting, it's just a vicious cycle. But yeah, things are great with Penn State football right now. I think rational people would agree, and a lot of the hype around recruiting, Kyle, I think it's because of boredom, right?
Yeah.
College football fans can't watch college football games for the next few months. And sports fans in general like to find things to complain about as part of what makes it fun. And there really isn't anything to complain about with Penn State football right now besides getting beat out for top end recruits. And with it being June, with it being probably the apex of the recruiting season, it's just kind of a perfect storm of people noticing when Penn State doesn't get every single recruit like it ever has gotten every single
Well,
recruit, right? Like that's never happened.
let's just throw this out here, Joe. You know, Kevin Brown, who by 2 of the 4 recruiting services, you know, is the number 1 kid in PA. I mean, I know Joey O'Brien's the number 1 kid in a few other services here, but Penn State to get Kevin Brown needed to outwit and outlast Georgia and Alabama. Messiah Minkins, they had to stave off Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame. You look at Troy Huhn at quarterback, Texas. Look at what Steve Sarkisian's done as a head coach. Notre Dame, Ohio State, and even LSU. Like, these aren't, like, it's easy to magnify the recruiting losses, but look at the wins Penn State's had. So to say that Penn State has a recruiting crisis, to me, you're blowing it out of proportion, in my opinion.
Yeah, and keep in mind, 2 of Penn State's bigger recruiting misses, at least when it comes to star ratings, Julian Fleming, Nolan Rucci.
They ended
Where
up
did they end up?
Valley. They ended up back. It's not guaranteed Joey O'Brien will be back. I mean, this world of the transfer portal is this. I will emphasize this enough. This is probably as good as Penn State's been recruiting in the Franklin era. I know they had 22 is probably their high point. I think it was the 2019 class with Ricky Slade and Justin Shorter that was up there as well.
2018, I think, but
2018, yeah. I couldn't remember which one, but they're at that level, and I am not disappointed by this class and I'm enjoying the fact that Penn State's not afraid to go national. Like, you look at the Brandon Arrington thing. Sure, Penn State ran out of some gas there, but they were in it for a while. Even with the lineman out of Baltimore that's going to Oregon, and I botched his name earlier. The fact that Penn State made Oregon really fight for it, that's something to be said there, considering what Oregon has done, sending a lot of offensive linemen to the NFL since, this predates Lanning, but when you look at what Mario Cristobal did to revamp that program, it's really become a O-line U candidate in itself with the development. So we all wanted Joey O'Brien. It didn't happen. Let's not overreact.
Oh, I didn't find anything online. That was that was not my phone, but this is a good time to end segment 1 of Joe and the Fat Man. When we come back, we'll go from talking about future college football stars to past college football stars. Kyle made a list. We're going to talk about that list when we return to Joe and the Fat Man.